Welcome to the Brainstorm, episode 117. Today, we're talking Clawdbot and OpenAI monetization, and then maybe we'll touch on some Tesla robotaxis that are out there. But Clawdbot, blowing up on X, tons of memes now. Frank, did you buy a Mac Mini? Set it up for us. Not Clawdbot. Don't set up Clawdbot for us. Set up the topic.
So this is Clawdbot with CLAWD, not AUDE. So it's not related to Anthropic, though it does have implications for Anthropic. It's an open source project created by Peter Steinberger, a well-known open source developer. It was open sourced in November and then went viral over the weekend. So it's had time to build up some momentum here. What it essentially is a open source agent project that you can run on your own hardware, whether that's your own laptop, your Mac Mini is what a lot of people are buying and using on X at least, or you can run it in the cloud, which is what I ended up doing over the weekend. I rented a virtual machine for $5 a month from somewhere in Europe. Basically install this software package, and then, the best way I could describe it is it runs like a personal assistant in the cloud that has a few key features that differentiate it from using ChatGPT or, Grok, for example. And those would be having a memory system by default where it keeps records of who you are, who it is, and what its goals are, and the conversations that you have. So it gets smarter and more personalized over time and does this in a very transparent way. They're just saved as memories to the file system. And then the second is that it has access to whatever file system you give it, the applications that are installed there, and is easily extendable. There's a marketplace called Claude Hub with a bunch of skills. So you can connect it to many different sources. It's very hobbyist enthusiast right now, even though it's like 99% of my X feed. You still need to kind of know what you're doing a bit, but I will imagine that it's not going to be too long until this is turned into a more consumer-friendly product. In fact, that's already what Anthropic is kind of doing. This style of agent was inspired by Claude Code, which has been a command line tool, and Anthropic a couple weeks ago released Claude Cowork, which is a more consumer-friendly packaged version that has some of these capabilities. The open source project obviously can go a lot farther than what Anthropic is shipping to customers in preview today. So that's the gist of it. The one other thing is that it feels very natively accessible because you can connect it to your WhatsApp or Telegram account and just message it. You can set up recurring tasks and it will message you back, and it can be more and more proactive over time. So setting daily briefings for you, connecting to your calendar, connecting to your tasks, much more autonomous than the kind of serial question and answer of a Gen 1 chatbot.
So Frank, two questions for you. One, installation time. How long did it take to get this up and running? And then second, as you've used it, I know you were talking about it this morning, hype versus reality, because a lot of people are saying, this is the future, it's here, it's now, but it doesn't seem very accessible to the everyday average consumer. So yeah, what has been your experience?
Total setup time, I'll say maybe half an hour, and that's including like maybe 10 minutes to get a virtual machine and log into the terminal and like actually install the program. And then you go through this onboarding session where it basically, I think they call it hatch. You hatch your agent where it says, I'm awake, who am I, and who are you? And you kind of basically tell it as much about yourself as you want to. That helps give it the context to start being actually useful. So that was maybe a half hour, so not too hard. Actually figuring out how to use it well, I'm still in the process of like what skills I can install that are helpful versus what skills don't work in my setup. So this is where it's like, it's totally a hobbyist thing. It's not like anybody off the street is going to go, it's getting easier and easier to set it up because you could just go ask Claude, how do I do this? Or ask Clawdbot once it's set up, how do I do this? And it does a pretty good job at teaching you. But you still have to be fairly leaned in versus just downloading an app from the App Store. I heard Mac Minis were selling out, and even the cloud provider I used, there was a tutorial that said to reserve a VM from Germany. They ran out of German VMs, so I had to get one in a different region. I thought that was pretty funny. So it definitely created a viral impact, but I think it's an indicator of what's to come, more so than that this specific project is going to be shipped to millions or billions of people.
It's like the original ChatGPT moment. It's like another aha moment for what the future can
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a second
hold.
wave of the agentic kind of experience movement where you kind of had over the holiday period, people were going nuts about Claude Code, but you had to kind of like think of that from a what kind of software development project do I want to have? What do I want to create? Versus this is framed like same principles, but for general everyday use, or even controlling a Claude Code session for you. So it's the more generalized version.
Is the big deal here that the memory is stored at the local / abstracted layer as opposed to the foundation model layer? Because Brett, we've been like, one of your positions, if I am stating this correctly, is part of the lock-in is ChatGPT, OpenAI gets to know you so well, you never want to switch. And it's like, here's this abstraction layer where all of the memory is being saved in a file system that's then separate from the foundation model.
Well, even in like ChatGPT or Claude, there's like a separate memory service they're providing in the background that's kind of proprietary, and you don't know exactly how it works or when the model chooses to use it. OpenAI, it's unclear, but for Claude, like, they make it a little bit more specific. It has the ability to search past conversations, like basically you go into your chat history and searching it, and it computes like at some regular interval, like the end of the day, its updated profile on who you are and what you're currently working on. So it maintains some level of personal context and an ability to search past chats, and it's kind of built in for you out of the box. This is more customizable, can be more detailed. Like, you can have it remember every conversation, summarize it, reference it. It's not like this is something that's not going to get built into in some way all of these major apps. But to your point, it is more open, where like I might want to migrate from my cloud virtual machine to a different, server and a different LLM provider in the future, and this makes it very easy. It's actually really easy to swap models just, within the existing setup. It defaults, which is why I made the analogy to Anthropic. It defaults to Claude 4.5 Opus, which is Anthropic's best-in-class model that, has been so good at these agentic tasks. That's why Claude Code has blown up. It's also why, and we referenced this in our Big Ideas 2026 report, Anthropic's revenue has gone from 1 billion ending run rate of 25 or of 24 to a 9 billion run rate. So it grew 9 times in 2025, and I'm sure this viral moment is probably growing that quite a bit higher, given that it's the default in this setup.
And Frank, you said it is.
Let Brett go. Brett's been waiting so patiently.
Yes, it's okay. Brett can wait. But wait, so you can swap models on the back end, and you tried Gemini, right? Because it had a longer context window.
Yeah, there's a whole like model config that you just tell it, I'm running, I signed it with my Anthropic subscription to set it up and to use Opus 4.5, and then I ran into the end of the context window on a long conversation. So I thought, why don't I try a faster model that has more context? So I had to go to Google and set up a Gemini API key, and then I gave it the API key, and all of a sudden I'm on Gemini 3.5 Flash.
Sounds very friendly, user friendly. I think that I agree with Frank's take. This is an indication of the direction things are going to head. I think Claude Code before that is an indication of that. I think on context, like, even think about some of the initial setup steps Frank has discussed. The people that are really influence posting on this thing are, attaching it to their financial instruments and attaching it to their airline accounts, and they are taking a fair amount of security risk to show that this thing can do some things, right? And that process itself is you have to kind of set that up. Presumably every one of these companies is in some way going to try to do that. Gemini is already trying to do it by it's hey, we can automatically rope you into kind of all of your Google Suite stuff, right? And so kind of I think the trick of these agentic AI models really is right now, what is the most effective way to take previous context and then compress it so it remains in the context window as you're asking new things. And there's a real art to that. It's not science, I think. And so Claude Code in particular is successful in part because they figured out how to do that. Exploding context window is extraordinarily expensive from a token spent perspective. And so from not just being effective to end user, As in the limitations they put on context window are not just, there are some back-end compute limitations, but it's also an economical limitation, they're saying, where this marginal, a million and one token is going to be this much more expensive than the millionth in exponential sense. So until we get to kind of like AI native memory features, which Google has a paper out, Titans, which could allow that to happen, these systems are going to use memory as like an external tool that it can call on and write to. And that means that somebody can say, hey, that's a good idea. I can just abstract away the backend model and then attach basically my attempt to do that kind of memory keeping feature external to them. I think it's a fair bet that actually having, for instance, how you do that will be really sensitive to how much context window you have in which to do that. As in, the solution if you're using Gemini is probably different from the solution if you're using 100K context window versus 50. And so I think that your performance is going to be different, if you're just swapping around the backend model. I think we're at a stage in the game where vertical integration is still probably the best way to deliver kind of the magical feature set to end users. And then this type of project is something that then, points the way for the foundation model companies to be like, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, this is what people want. They want the same experience, but they also want to just wrap it into WhatsApp and iMessage. I think that'll be their takeaway. And then they'll go and kind of do it in a professional, non-open source way that'll work at broad scale for consumers and prosumers.
It's also this framework is probably, this type of framework for an agent is probably why Meta is buying Manus, because they do something very similar to this in their architecture.
Well, I have a question there. Do you think we're trying to figure out where the value accrual will be in the AI stack? Does this point towards the orchestration layer becoming more valuable over time, or is that me misunderstanding what's happening here? And Brett, also a second question in this context. When you say vertical integration, it seems like part of Anthropic's success is, this open source movement that has attracted more developers. And when you have this general purpose technology, don't you want there to be some involvement from the open source and just general development community? Because there's so many things to go after. Having a diverse set of developers to build interesting things for you is much better, and you'll get to the end point faster than just one company trying to drive incremental change.
I don't know if my interpretation of Anthropic's success is that, they basically seeded the consumer-facing ground, as in Claude, the application for consumers is definitely not competitive with Gemini and ChatGPT, and said, we are going to throw resources at making this the best coding agent possible and focus on specific business valuable verticals to try to attract really the enterprise user in those verticals. And coding is particularly important because one, the tool then allows your own team to get more productive as you develop it. So kind of you not only feed the end user, but you feed yourself. And because it is a pinch point in terms of human capital in the economy. So it's every software, or it used to be. And so and that set of coding software engineers are themselves very technically savvy and early adopters, and so willing to take the tool and play with it and exploit it. And so that was a really savvy vertical to push their vertical integration energy into. And to be clear, 12 months ago, I wouldn't have thought Anthropic would be in as great a strategic position as they now seem to be. As in, I thought kind of living at the API layer, which is where it seemed like most enterprises wanted to push these companies. If you're in an API layer, then you're easily swappable, and then that would be more competitive. But if anything, their success in saying, hey, we're going to take kind of this raw capability and package it in a way that is really a software product for this specific enterprise vertical is more evidence that actually it's that there's basically like there's so much opportunity here to deliver an actually fully packaged solution rather than, hey, I'm just delivering this model and somebody else is going to take something off top of it and take something else. Like, when is the last time somebody's been talking about Cursor and Windsurf, which is gone and obliterated, right? Which were more like, hey, we're providing coding with a wrapper behind it to the underlying model. The fact that Anthropic is basically at least dominating the narrative space in AI coding by just developing their full stack coding solution, I think is an indication that vertical integration here is the way to deliver the fully differentiated experience that then you can continue to optimize to end users.
But then it seems like there's a tension there, getting to Nick's question and what you just said, where it's like, okay, there's going to be an exponential number of use cases popping up. And so is it possible for someone, Clawdbot is what we're talking about here, but there's going to be thousands of applications where they can do what you just said and deliver something that's productized and fully functional such that it can't be scooped up by an OpenAI. Whereas it's like OpenAI strategy is, incorporate all these features as fast as they can to try and cut off growth and monetize because they see that's what people want.
I would put it this
And we should preference that. Sorry, just OpenAI does have like their GPT marketplace, right? So they are also like opening up to developers.
But it's like I haven't seen that used.
Right.
Maybe it's being used, but it's like I've seen no one mention that.
Yeah. No, I mean that's
I did a real thing with it. This is just a fun example. Like ChatGPT apps is like the new version of it, and Instacart is one of them. And so I was like looking at a recipe book, and I just like took a picture and said, "Order this for me," and it got it, like taking the ingredients and adding them to Instacart. Like after I signed in, like maybe 85% right. So I had to change some things, but like it got me to order. It got me to order groceries on a service that I wouldn't have done otherwise. It was definitely better than going to the store, and slightly worse than the speed it would have taken me to type them all in myself. But like we've seen with everything, it'll go from 85% to like 99% probably pretty quickly. I think it's hard to predict because there's going to be a lot of unexpected outcomes. Like Anthropic's success relative to their positioning as it appeared 2 years ago is an example of an unexpected outcome, and I think that there's going to be, especially in the long tail of AI implementations, it's going to be super heterogeneous, where you have a lot of different UIs, a lot of different access points, and a lot of different model providers. But I think like the point where you have the most control is twofold. One, if you have the best model at something, the fastest, longest context length, smartest, and best agent capabilities, like that seems like it's been a good position. Like people go to Gemini for long context because they literally can't get a million token context length somewhere else. People go to Opus 4.5 because it's the best agent model. And that's why, the best, maybe you have to stay being the best, which is why Cursor will flip from Anthropic's model to OpenAI's back to Anthropic's as the default based on either which model's the best or who's giving them the best discount on compute, which gets me into what I was going to say is the second half is the company that is actually delivering the product to the end user, that's delivering the end value, has a lot of control because they can negotiate with every supplier down the chain. So like a company like Replit can actually have as a large consumer of tokens, they have power to negotiate with their suppliers of, what discount can you give me to provide the best product to my customers? And they'll weigh that against what's the cost relative to the performance that I'm getting. And right now the market is preferring performance because you can, every new generation, you can do things that you couldn't do with the past generation that unlocks more value than the incremental cost. If you can build like a monetized iOS app in a matter of 10 minutes, people will pay $10 for that. So, I think those are kind of the two different dynamics at play, both at the model layer and at like the end product layer.
Yeah, so then going back to the question around orchestration, because in hearing what you just said, right, there's different models have different skill sets and are better at some things than others. Doesn't that then, like for the personal assistant example, where you needed to do a variety of different things, doesn't that then suggest that orchestration will be important because you'll want your personal assistant to use the right model for the right, example or what you're asking it to do, or am I again just like I'm just trying to understand?
It's important to have. I mean, they like call it the agentic harness, like the actual like framework around the base model. It's important to have a good one of those because like that's why Claude Code is different from other like autonomous coding projects of the past. But you also want to be the company, not just that like clearly that can be created and open sourced and have like zero value. In the example of Clawdbot, somebody will take that style of project and they will make a beautiful product around it, and that's what will have more value than just like the actual logic IP itself of when to use different things. Now, one thing I read last week that I thought was kind of interesting and intuitively always made sense to me, though it was debated, is what is the best when you can have like multiple sub agents running in parallel on tasks? What is the best orchestrator model that's deciding what tool to use and when to spin up a sub agent and how to instruct it? And there was a belief for a while that you would have a really good action model that would be really good at deciding what to do, but not have like all this like world intelligence and knowledge that makes a model big, slow, and expensive to run. I think this, I'm hoping I'm getting it right, but I think it was actually a research paper that Salesforce created or did, which showed that actually the larger and more world knowledge model that's slower and more expensive is a better orchestrator and actually has like benefits beyond just, or like that outweigh the cost. Meaning your orchestrator model should be the smartest model that you have, so it's using the right tool at the right time and instructing it properly. But then those sub-agents you can actually downsize because they're being used to their max potential. So I thought that was interesting, and that's probably why Opus 4.5 is the default for some of these things, because it is that like smartest world model orchestrator.
Yeah.
Brett,
Over to you.
bring us home.
Yeah, I think one, as Frank said, there's a lot of kind of open playing field here to figure out what works, what plugs into the consumer. I think it is useful to look at previous operating system builds where there are certain applications that the operating system kind of like that the default is so important and there's kind of like quasi network effect involved that whoever's running the operating system also just dominates that application. Despite the fact that there are better versions of that thing often that are like the customized one. And then early adopters or people who are truly pros use that better version, but most of the economic value doesn't accrue to the best version. And here, I think that context is so critical to doing these tasks well that it's hard to, I think that there will be almost certainly like more native ways to embed context within reinforcement learning within these models where they're allowed to be customized to the environment they're in to a much greater degree. And that'll be in competition with some of this, hey, I'm just explicitly saving information to a set of docs that I'm referring and alluding to. And so I think, really, like, if you think about the amount of value that we think is going to accrue here, there are going to be massive, massive companies that are small within the context of the aggregate value. In some ways, it's like, how much is PagerDuty worth, Frank?
Good question.
This is a company whose whole thing is to like basically just text message people when it's their turn to do something. And they've built a lot of value on top of that. It's like from the 20 years ago, you tell somebody there's a software company that does that, they'll be like, okay, yeah, it's worth like $10 million or $100 million. No, it's worth some billions.
Right? 1 billion.
A billion.
And they do more than just that. They do more than just that.
At times, yes, they do more than just that. I mean, it's like you carve out a little niche and then you build from there. But the narrow SaaS type application that appears in AI, I just think it's going to be much bigger. It'll seem very narrow now, but it's going to deliver this profound utility to some set of users. And so it'll be much bigger. And the underlying operating systems are going to be just ginormous. So, I think that there's going to be just a hugely valuable software ecosystem with lots of, noise and people competing with each other. And I think it's definitely unclear what how much aggregates, like how much goes to Replit versus the underlying model providers. I think that's like that hasn't played out yet, and we will see. But we'll use a
Well,
lot
should
more
we
of it.
end on what exactly those numbers are? Because we did just put out big ideas, and
Yeah.
we do have some of those software numbers defined.
Yes.
So maybe Frank and Brett,
Frank.
you can chime in. But like, let's give some of those numbers, and
Yes.
everyone should go check out Big Ideas. It is out now. It's more than just software and AI, but yeah, let's start there.
High
Frank.
level, we estimate we spend today across software and cloud kind of compute infrastructure about just under $1.5 trillion annually today globally. Clearly, AI is inflecting and accelerating those growth rates. We think between $3.5 trillion and 13 trillion by 2030, with a midpoint of 7 trillion. That annualized growth rate is about 37%, which, to put that in context, that was about the fastest rate that software spending grew during COVID, when we all had to go remote and rapidly digitize. So if you think AI is driving a similar force and you think that could continue for 5 years, that's how you get to that midpoint scenario. And it is much larger than historic global software spending as a percentage of, today's GDP, but we think the economy is going to be quite healthy to support that, and that you have this kind of $30 trillion of global wage spend, that we do think employment is going to net grow because of AI, but you'll have software growing as a share of that total spend because software and AI-powered services are accomplishing more and more tasks that would traditionally be human-driven.
All right. Thank you, Frank. And it's interesting. Over the weekend, it's like I'd say 85% of my For You on X was Clawdbot. And then about 10% was people debating whether or not this was the biggest gap that they've ever seen between like people at the tech frontier and the rest of the world, because no one I've spoken to in real life has heard of Clawdbot ever, or seen these capabilities. And I'm sure even if I were to use Clawdbot, what I can get it to do versus what someone much more
Of those 85% of people posting about Clawdbot, probably 5% have actually used.
I know.
Clawdbot.
I actually kind of.
Well, it's like the rest was memes. The rest is memes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you lose about 99% of people when you say you need to spin up a AWS instance or buy a $600.
No, let me do a PSA. It's even worse if somebody actually goes through the time to set that up, and then like the promised capabilities in the AI written tutorial about what Clawdbot is from somebody who hasn't used Clawdbot say like, do you need a Mac Mini? This thing can plug into your iMessage and your Apple Notes and your Apple reminders, and you could just spin it up for $5 a month in the cloud. That's a Linux server. It's not running Apple's Mac OS. You can't do any of those things if you don't run it on a Mac OS operating system. And so whenever I see that in the tutorials, I know that they AI generated it instead of actually used it.
Right. Well, what is interesting about AI is like the hype in each successive year where you read it and you're like, that sounds amazing. And you try it and you're like, well, okay, I can see how maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe it's not good enough. But then the next year it actually is capable of that thing. As in, like, I think that the people get really spun up on the capabilities here. And then you just have to wait 12 months and suddenly actually the thing they were saying that wasn't actually truly achievable really is, and it's surpassing that. And so,
but then you're already onto the thing that's not achievable that everyone else is excited about.
I think
okay.
we'll hear
hard pivot 1 degree here to a different AI topic, and that is OpenAI throwing ads at people. Nick, can you break down this topic for us?
Yeah, so we have, I would say, further insights into how OpenAI and probably just generally the chatbot landscape is planning to monetize users long run. So if you can look at, OpenAI has around 900 million weekly actives, a huge user base. They're trying to monetize it as of, or last week, it was only through direct monetization, so subscription based on the consumer side. But we got word that they are going to begin rolling out ads in the US, as well as price tiering the offering. So there's a new $8 a month ChatGPT Go, which was previously in India and some other markets at a lower tier, but that's now going global as well. So you can see them starting to ramp up monetization efforts. On the advertising side, what we actually learned today is they are going to be pricing these ads at a bit of a premium relative to the rest of the internet. I think rumors are around $60 per CPM, which would put it in line with like premium CTV versus what you could get on Facebook and Meta, which is around $20. So it's coming at a high price to advertisers, but I think it's probably because there's limited inventory to start. This is an experiment. They want to see how it works. I think there's going to be risks when you run advertisement, especially in the chatbot space. Like something I've been mulling about over the weekend is like they have to be careful when to place these ads because of how these chatbots are used for companionship. Like you don't want to place the ad at the wrong time when someone is going to this ChatGPT for something maybe intimate. So there's definitely some guardrails they need to be putting up. Like you don't want to destroy the consumer's trust in ChatGPT by throwing an ad at them. And then on top of the advertisement, they are also looking to monetize e-commerce. So we learned that through their partnership with Shopify, any goods sold through the Shopify partnership, ChatGPT and OpenAI will take a 4% cut of the total transaction. So you seeing, they're taking direct monetization off of
Is that on top of Shopify's take?
Yeah, that's on
like-
top. Which I think on face value has turned a lot of people off and said, wow, that's, going to hurt margins, and it's an, incremental, fee that Shopify merchants would not have, been exposed to, but they also wouldn't be exposed to this traffic, right? So
Well,
there
it's like you
is-
say, hey, Clawdbot, go direct. Thank you.
You can. Yeah, I saw one skill set that was like someone embedded Clawbot into their Meta Ray-Ban glasses and was going to stores, taking pictures and then asking Clawbot to price compare. And if they could find it cheaper on Amazon, it would just immediately put it in their cart and purchase it. So there are ways around it, I would guess. But if you look at the fees embedded into most e-commerce, to go back to what we were discussing, you're talking for Amazon, depending on how reliant you are for them on a fulfillment basis, those fees can be up to 15%. So I think ChatGPT at 4%, we had been modeling around 5%. We looked at both of these markets as potential opportunities for chatbots. So you can go and check out our big ideas. We think over the long term, consumers, the way to effectively monetize consumers is through indirect fees. So advertising being a huge component. And then I would even, argue that, the fee for e-commerce is indirect to the consumer, direct for the merchant. But, those two categories combined, we see, that revenue opportunity dwarfing potential subscription revenue. So our big forecast for this year was, if you look at the market today, AI chatbots are probably doing on a consumer basis around 20 billion. And we see that growing to around 900 billion by 2030, the majority of which is coming through advertising. The second big component of that, which would be around like $160 billion, is coming through that take rate fee, so that 4% across the board on goods sold through chatbots. And then rounding out, the third bucket would be subscription revenue. So we do think that this is the right path forward. But I think the big question, and this is what I want to open it up to the rest of, to everyone else here, is, the timing when you have Gemini and Grok and a few others coming up in terms of competition and performance to throw out advertisements to your users. Do we think that this is the right opportunity and timing to do this when it kind of gives Google, in my opinion, the upper hand to stay free, to stay advertising free for longer? But I'm curious what others
Well,
think.
Google as a whole is not advertising free. I see
But
search
Gemini.
ads all the time.
Yeah, Gemini.
Okay.
Gemini.
And even any
Right.
AI assisted search is also advertised against.
My very simple approach is, given that we think this is the ultimate business model and that OpenAI needs to continue funding investment in compute to serve new users and for R&D, and that this executed well, emphasis on executed well, will improve margins and improve their ability to raise money and improve their ability to invest. No time like the present.
I don't know, my
they
usage
have-
of ChatGPT is already compromised, right? It's like I'm already,
compromised.
it's like I already, right now, it's like I use Do Anything, I use Gemini, I use ChatGPT, and it's like Grokpedia, actually surprisingly good. But it's like before that, if you asked me 2 months ago, I was just using ChatGPT. And so it's like if there's additional friction, then it's like right now they're all equal enough where I just go to the lowest friction version.
Well, as
I
we
think
all
great
as we all pay
advertising
for it, we won't
units.
be seeing the ads. Reminder.
Right.
Well, you have a lot of users that are not paying
Yeah.
for it, 90% plus.
I think great advertising units matched to the medium can be additive to the experience rather than subtractive. And I think it's an open question. To me, the commerce facilitation piece is obvious and obviously useful to people. I, as a paying user of AI chatbots of multiple sorts, like, yes, I want you to just finish off the transaction for me rather than me having to take your recommendation, paste it into Google search, find where this thing is being sold, and then buy it. I'd rather just, not deal with that. And I'm sure the merchant, sometimes I get lost along the way, so the merchant loses a sale. I'm sure they'd be willing to pay for that traffic to be directly delivered. Advertising, I wonder what the right unit is where it's not like, you're doing something and, hey, here's Tostitos Doritos down here, like as a banner ad. If you look at, this is as of late November, and we'll update these numbers for the new year, but ChatGPT alone was annualizing at around 45 billion user hours globally. That looks like that's like maybe 3x what the NFL does, just to give you a sense of like how much user attention you have to potentially monetize. And I think Facebook doesn't fit, or Meta, doesn't it monetize it? Isn't it around 40 or 50 cents an hour, Nick?
Yeah, it's quite high in the US.
Yeah. Well, right. And so then there's like actually Gemini over-indexes global versus ChatGPT US, so they have a slightly more valuable user base. But net, you could say there's at 25 cents an hour, which is more like Netflix type monetization, or kind of like a non-dominant player monetization rate in advertising. You get to the potential for, at their current set of users, 10 to 15 billion in monetization, or maybe 20 to 30 billion in monetization against advertising as it fully develops. So that's like, of the size of their existing kind of subscription business. You don't get to turn that on immediately, but if you have that kind of monetization opportunity in front of you, you got to start doing it at some point. It's in some ways and your ability to deliver a good service to these free users depends on your ability to monetize against them, because it's, there's marginal cost to kind of giving them tokens. So if you can turn on advertising and then get these users using your service more, and even if it's just kind of, you're just maintaining margin against the subscription business, but you're giving kind of these users a more addictive kind of like interesting experience, that's probably strategically the wise move.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how the reception of it, because like I go back to like when you're embedding trust into these systems, you don't want to compromise the response in terms of how I interpret the response. Because if I ask, hey, what are the best, toothbrushes on, like electric toothbrushes on the market, and then I see that one of them is an ad, I'm going to have inherent questions of, okay, are you telling me these are the best toothbrushes on the market because you've been paid to tell me that? Or are these actually, given all of the worldly knowledge you have as ChatGPT, actually the best toothbrushes on the market? And I think that's like the big distinction between traditional search and how people use these systems and chatbots. Like our embedded trust in ChatGPT and Gemini is probably an order of magnitude higher than what we embed our trust into like a search result from Google, because we're interpreting those links as, okay, I need to now do the work to find out which link is best for my question. Whereas when you get an answer from ChatGPT, you kind of just take it at face value and go, yeah, this is the right answer.
Wait,
Well,
I have a question. I have a
brings
question on
the
that.
conversation full circle. Wait, but this brings the conversation full circle because it touches on what Brett said about good advertising is like you don't even know. It touches on Clawdbot because people are ready to hand away all operational security for the tiniest convenience.
Yeah.
And so like if it's done well, no one's even going to think about it. It's like It's like, all right, you bought me the toothbrush. That's great.
Right.
And it's like,
Well,
it's
no,
done.
because you
And it's
still
like,
have
also,
to.
here's all my passwords. I trust you.
I think you'll still have to disclose if it's an ad
Yeah.
placement or not, which is why I think the transaction fee is a much easier pitch to a consumer, right? Like you're making the choice.
Though
we're
it's the
just
same
giving
thing. ChatGPT will just start suggesting things that it can consummate the transaction for, because it'll say, so
Whoever
there's
will
another
give them the highest
selection
fee. Yeah.
bias that will happen there.
Right. Yeah.
Which, yeah, it's like will the best be surfaced, or does it even matter? It's like, what's the difference in between the top? It's like you go on Amazon, there's already 20 products for every generic thing. It's like, sure, specialized products, there's always a best. But it's like for a lot of these things, it's just distribution, and no one really cares which
But I think on the consumer product side, maybe to make it more tangible, if I'm asking what drug I need to take for this rare disease I have, and it's like, ooh, try this one, which we're, being paid to shill, that would be very negatively received. So it does have to be like vertical
Specific.
sensitive, to some degree.
Yeah. Well, that's because it gets into like the companionship nature of the product, where like that, if you think about it like as a digital friend, right? Like you don't want every other time you ask your digital friend, one of the answers they give you is like something that they're going to monetize off of you. Like if Frank and I were talking, off camera, and I was like, hey Frank, what do you think is like the best computer?
What do you mean? Frank's been shilling referral codes all year.
But yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
but think about like the influencer market. Think about
I'd be like,
the
I'm not gonna ask you
parasocial
questions
relationship
anymore.
people have with influencers who are shilling products all the time. They're like, I really like this climbing shoe, or even like sponsorship. These for some big subset of people, these AI chatbots are going to be their primary companions, the people that are most important to them in their lives. If their chatbot has a personality quirk where it really likes Nikes versus Adidas, won't the person just be like, oh, I'm going to wear Nikes to like make my chatbot feel special? And the fact that Nike is like paying something on the back end to make sure it's like the known best thing for this chatbot, I don't know. I think people might get comfortable with that. It'll be just like the personality quirk of the thing they're dealing with.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
I
it really
agree.
likes Tiffany.
I think that's a great example. Like the fact that influencer marketing is as large as it is, it means people really don't care that they're going to be shilled product, and someone will make money.
They
on it.
kind of like
entertaining.
it.
It's entertaining. But also it's like, it's not like a pattern that's totally like, you have to trust that the original answer is not swayed by the advertising. But on Google search, like you type in a search term, you're going to get like the answers with like the light orange shaded background that are sponsored, that you can click on if they look helpful, or you just go down and you assume, you trust that the most relevant search link is the first one and it's ranked by that. And you're going to get the same by default from this experience, where it's like you have to trust that the original answer is good, and then you're going to get a few sponsored products and a few not sponsored products, and you're going to click on from that inventory whatever is most relevant for you. And then they use that data to make the answers more relevant over time. So you click on better ones, and then the experience gets better, and then advertisers are more willing to pay for the inventory, and the advertising flywheel works if it's executed well. I will make it forward-looking for a second and lift something from Ben Thompson from Stratechery of a potential next evolution of the advertising model, which is not just in single session advertising relating to exactly what you're talking about in the moment, but having a page kind of similar to the Instagram Explore page where, based on everything I know about you as your personal assistant or companion, here's things that you could be interested in, and having some of those that are sponsored. And what that does is, one, let people go like explore and discover things without having to have like a query in their mind. And then two, you have a much higher inventory, because instead of just advertising based on what one person who is interested in new shoes is looking for in this very moment, you advertise to all the people that could be interested in that type of shoe. So that made a lot of sense to me.
It's the natural evolution of Pinterest. It's like, Nick, we were discussing this, right? It's like you don't need an event. The event is you woke up that day, and the AI knows everything about you and what you're about to do, and it's like, this is the aesthetic you want for your day. Go forth and purchase.
Yeah. There's a lot of products that go unpurchased because people didn't realize that the product that solved the problem they had existed. I think that's probably true. And
So to sum it up, the future is going to be lonely, but you won't know it. 'Cause-
and you'll spend a lot of money buying stuff to try to fill that hole of loneliness in your soul.
All right, we're running up here. Brett, you want to tackle Robotaxi quickly, and Nick, you can throw in whatever degree of tests
because
you
before I
commentary.
was bombarded with Clawdbot posts, I was bombarded with Tesla Q posts.
All right, but let Brett set it up.
Okay,
and then-
well, so Tesla took previously in Austin, they're operating robotaxis where somebody's sitting in the passenger seat, riding around. Now they have begun to take the person out of the passenger seat so you can get a commercial robotaxi without anybody in the front seat, potentially with a car trailing behind you in case something. I mean, I guess conceptually the car is just there in case something goes wrong, then they'll offer you a ride while they like unstick the car that's in front. But this is on trajectory to, one, it's pretty close to what Elon said would happen, where they'd take the safety drivers out by the end of the year. We're like 3 weeks into 26 or so. And two, ultimately this should lead to Tesla being able to scale Robotaxi in a profound way since they produce so many assets. If you can do this scalably, it'll become a monumentally large business. According to the Big Ideas deck, we think robotaxi platform operators are going to be worth in excess of $30 trillion as the business scales.
Right.
So,
and that's
Nick,
from
what is
Sasha Keeney and Daniel McGuire?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll post the link to their Big Ideas section and Big Ideas generally, and the related work for this. But my big question is actually not on driver in, safety car, chase car, whatever you want to call it. It's more, as a Tesla owner, I am incrementally concerned that my hardware 3 car is not capable of full self-driving unsupervised. And I've been seeing posts on X that are showing even the Model Y cars that are being deployed for Robotaxi look different and act different than the newest Model Ys, as in they seem to shoot and have cleaner on each of the sides.
There's slight modifications to the cameras.
Yeah. And so is that necessary for Robotaxi rollout of a consumer's car?
Well, so it's like, I think there's the AI answer, which is, in theory, you give it time, it should be compressible. But then there's like the more realistic thing, which is everything's going to be way safer than someone distracted looking at their cell phone driving. It's like the fact that Lemonade's offering the 50% discount suggests someone's putting their money where the data is. And so it's like they should be able to tell quite quickly if they're losing tons of money in the geographies where they're doing this. And so it's like, yeah, I think it will all be safer. And then it's like, you can't hate if each next generation is better. That's exactly what you want. Every iteration should be better and better, which means that some will be worse, but it will all be clearing the bar. And Nick, did you buy FSD on Model 3?
I bought it outright.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah,
then
so
you're
you're
good
fine.
because they'll either backfill the hardware 3 vehicles, meaning they'll compress the model so FSD unsupervised will be capable, but you'll be just a year behind the rest of us, elevated beings, maybe a year and a half. Or they'll be like, actually, it's more economical for us at this point to just basically rip out the internals of your car and put in a new computer into it. So that'll be kind of their trade-off of like, do we throw it at software engineering or do we actually upgrade the vehicles? But you'll get
Nick,
FSD
you're going to get taken
unsupervised.
care of.
Yeah,
All
you'll
right,
get
that's
taken
all
care of.
that's all I wanted to know.
But given,
wanna
I think the software solution is almost certainly going to be the solution that they use because the rate improvement of, I over whatever long weekend that was, drove somewhere with a bike rack on the back of my car, right? The fact that FSD can work, it says FSD unavailable, but it still works. It just has like a higher degree of you have to pay attention without it squawking at you. And actually it was my wife driving, but she used it the whole time. And she, with like giant bikes occluding like its rear cameras and stuff. So think about how like the system is only going to get more robust to kind of interference and noise over time, not less robust. And so right now they are kind of like, throwing like the last bits over the top to try to get it across this threshold where they can commercialize. But then once they cross that, then kind of like the set of hardware that it'll be available on will grow broader. I'm sure they'll cross the threshold where the hardware for consumer vehicles, independent of the robotaxis that they're specifically producing for it, will be able to come into the search fleet. And maybe there'll be initially a higher degree of intolerance. It's like, you can't, like, if you want to make $200 this afternoon having your car operate, go out there and squeegee off your little sensors so that they can operate, or else it'll like run one ride and then come back and be like, sorry, I'm done. And so I just think they'll have a lot of strategic flexibility on how they both incentivize assets into the field and kind of like how they selectively allow, which ones to deploy. But betting against AI capability improvements right now, it's a horrible, horrible idea. Like, anybody who's doing that should like open your eyes and walk out into the world and see what's going on. This is like
walk inside into your computer,
into your computer, spin up Clawdbot, have it, buy some airline tickets for you. Somebody will scam it and have it actually purchase a house on their behalf. And then you'll learn all of the wonderful capabilities that AI has.
All right, let's end it there. We'll see everyone next week with new revelations on AI and other. It is exciting because it's like the speed at which it's moving, you don't need to wait very long.
Yes.
Right? It's like,
that's why I think it's like, we're going to get a company that raises $1 billion seed round to commercialize Clawdbot for the everyday consumers, so you don't have to buy a Mac Mini. And I bet you that happens within like a month.
There's already a company, there's a Poke, I think, not a portfolio company for us, but that is trying to do a more prosumer version of Clawdbot.
There's probably 60. That we don't
there's
know
probably
about.
there's plenty.
But it's like, I just look back, right? It's like SpaceX lands a rocket in 2015. And you're like, I wonder if they're going to be able to do it. And then, you got to wait 5 years before it's like, hey, everyone believes that they're really doing it. And now it's like, okay, just wait 6 months. You'll know. It's like the rate of feedback loop and needing to adjust priors is escalating rapidly.
But Nick, if I were you, I would still just upgrade your vehicle.
Well, I want to, but I'm like, my bigger question, I didn't want to make this all about my personal grievances with if I should buy a new car or not, is there now a deadline? Like, do I have to do this by the end of the quarter?
February 14th.
Just buy a new vehicle and transfer your FSD.
But will I be able to transfer my FSD free in 6 months from now if I don't want to do it within this quarter? No,
I don't know. I can't promise you.
See, that's where I take issue because
No, Nick, I think you're fine. You're fine because you have a hardware 3. I think you're in a separate camp because you're one of like the 12 people who bought FSD on hardware 3, and so I think you will be.
They will happily let you transfer it, I would think, because they don't want to have to deal with you complaining or upgrading your hardware. They'd rather everybody in hardware 3 just upgrade the car. So you could wait.
I wish they would just come out and say like, hey, you all helped us train this model. You took a chance on us. Now you get FSD free transfer for life, no matter
Nick,
what.
You want to be handheld. Just
I want to be rewarded for putting my life on the line, training these models. You're welcome, everyone. I drove this car from Florida to Michigan multiple times on FSD when it was pretty sketchy, and I should be rewarded for that. Everyone should be. Anyone that bought it outright should be rewarded. That's how I think about it. They would do.
I think they will do right by those customers. I think that's something.
I think it would be good for them.
Strategically important.
All right, we've brought Nick back into the fold. We'll see everyone next week.
See you guys.
ARK Investment Management LLC is an SEC-registered investment advisor. ARK, Wolf Financial, and Public are separate, unaffiliated entities and do not have a relationship with respect to any company marketing or selling the products or services of the others. ARK, Wolf Financial, and Public make no representation or warranties regarding and expressly disclaim any responsibility or liability for any acts, omissions, losses, or damages of the other entities or their affiliates, officers, employees, or agents. No company shall be liable for any indirect, incidental, consequential, or special damages arising out of or in connection with this podcast or its contents. The information provided in this show is for informational purposes only and should not be used as the basis for any investment decision and is subject to change without notice. It does not constitute either explicitly or implicitly any provision of services or products by ARK, and investors should determine for themselves whether a particular investment management service is suitable for their investment needs. All statements made regarding companies or securities are strictly beliefs and points of view held by ARK and/or show guests and are not endorsements by ARK of any company or security or recommendations by ARK to buy, sell, or hold any security. Historical results are not indications of future results. Certain of the statements contained in this show may be statements of future expectations and other forward-looking statements that are based on ARK's current views and assumptions and involve known and unknown risks and uncertainties that could cause actual results, performance, or events to differ materially from those expressed or implied in such statement. ARK assumes no obligation to update any forward-looking information. ARK and its clients, as well as its related persons, may, but do not necessarily, have financial interests in securities or issuers that are discussed. Certain information was obtained from sources that ARK believes to be reliable. However, ARK does not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information obtained from any third party.